Welcome to Windows on the World. Now, recently we have seen some clueless events and stunningly simplistic propaganda, including the Women's March in London and also, of course, Washington. It's all part of a worldwide exercise in trivia and distraction. Check out our show on windowsontheworld.net, Women's March and New World Order Social Engineers. We have looked into who besides George Soros is bankrolling the participating agitation groups in this, along with, of course, major financial interests. This also ties into global governance under the UN, as investigated in our last show, Women's March and Social Engineers. Do check that out. So if the Women's March was about women's rights globally, what about treatment of women in Saudi Arabia? There's no mention of rape, torture or oppression, and the lunacy of Wahhabism, which is of course run by the Empire of Israel, UK, US and ISIS. As we're now in the post-fake news era, the state broadcasting apparatus is in full-on narcissistic trivia mode. With all this distraction going on, we're going to focus on things. So Trump is now Hitler and everything's a soundbite. It seems to be this is how simplistic things have become. So Piers Corbyn, what did you think of this Women's March?
Well, I agree with your basic analysis. You see, things are not what they seem. And people looking at news have to think, they've got to look at everything twice, 3 times, 4 times, check it out. Some things you thought you believed may be actually you've been misled. You know, I mean, I think the situation we're in now is that the international globalization plundering elite of the super rich and the giant corporations of Wall Street have taken a beating. They've taken a beating over Brexit, the European Union, one of their dreams is falling apart, and Trump won. Now, Trump stands for many things, of course, but he doesn't stand for the sort of corporate export of jobs from America, which they want, and that is their problem. So they're fighting back and getting very, very nasty. Now, the march at the weekend, I mean, you know, I know a lot of the women on there, and of course, many of them are there, possibly most of them, sincerely and honestly and wanting something. But when you analyse what did they actually want on that march, you can't see it. It isn't there. You see, normally, these sort of marches are spontaneous sort of things from the grassroots. People go there demanding policy. They want to save houses or save the NHS or they want jobs. But this wasn't about that at all. It was kind of about Trump's personality. Well, okay, you can have problems with his personality, but do you need a world march about it? I mean, what we should do is be fighting for and against policies that he might be putting forward or not. You know, that's what it ought to be about.
Well, it's been in the White House about 12 hours
well,
at this
that's
point,
right.
hasn't it?
But what did we see? Now, already, you see, he's actually saved a lot of jobs in America. He's getting more and more working class support, and he's stopped TTIP, the deal which would be actually Wall Street plundering Europe, and he stopped the TPP, the parallel thing in the Pacific, which would be disbenefit to many people, including American workers. And you see, those are good things, but they're not being talked about on this march. Instead, it was a kind of abstract thing. And when you look at the background of it, it was definitely not spontaneous.
No.
It was organised months ahead with massive input from Soros, the richest man in the world, or maybe the second richest, God knows what. But, you know, it's an agenda to upset what Trump is doing. Now, there's many things Trump may be doing which are going to be mad, or there's people behind him who've got all sorts of things. I mean, you know, I'm not saying I support everything Trump does at all, but I definitely support what he's saying about TTIP, TPP, and stopping the climate change action plan, which is part of the globalization agenda to export jobs from the West and generally lower living standards worldwide, actually, to the benefit of the super elite. And of course, this is a big ideological issue. And what's called the left are now defending it. But I mean, it is completely crazy.
Well, they've fallen for the promotion of distraction issues,
Yes.
which is really what they were there for. Certainly in Trafalgar Square, we couldn't actually find out why anyone was really there, and they didn't really know why they were there. It was all about empowerment and diversity and being vibrant, you know.
Well, that's
and
right, because normal demos, people say, yeah, I'm here because I want to defend this hospital or something, you know. Now, I think what's going to happen, I mean, is that this kind of coalescence of people who are feeling as if they're doing good, and some of what they are doing is good, there's no doubt about that, but it's going to happen that a lot of them, like the Bernie Sanders supporters, turned to vote for Trump because they saw Trump wanted to deliver certain things, and indeed has delivered certain things already. Now, I think what Soros is doing is really sort of trying to get the left to turn against what it believes in, like jobs and so forth. You know, it's a kind of creating a big confusion, and hopefully people will see through that. Some people will carry on with it, I'm sure, but I think a lot of them, I mean, if more of them supported Trump's specific aims, then of course they could achieve more. And when Trump comes up with something which is stupid, they'd be able to stop it as well if they go on in that direction, as opposed just to dancing around in streets and burning cars or whatever for what reason I can't understand.
Well, I think that it's polarised it, really, because we've now got this situation where the fake news agenda, which has really worked against the mainstream. You know, we've now got the Guardian reporting that the BBC is forming a debunking team to tackle fake stories that often start on Facebook and social media outlets. But these people really who are at these marches are the victims of very, very clever but quite crude in a way, social engineering. That's really what it's about. It's getting them to focus on trivial issues which have nothing to do with the candidate, as in Trump's case. You know, that's one issue. The other issue is to keep them very much into demanding equality and diversity, which they already have. There weren't.
Well, they're the elite. Most of those people on those march are the kind of most of them were white elite.
Exactly.
I mean,
so there wasn't
they're not
really
bad
any,
for being that, but that's who they are.
There weren't many on that march that looked oppressed. They
No.
very much
Well,
having
they
a
couldn't
day
afford
out.
to get there.
Well, they were having a day out. But they didn't really know why they were there. And when I asked one woman why she was there, she said, because I have a daughter.
Okay.
And I said, yes, but why are you here? She says, well, I've got a daughter. And that was
Okay.
an answer.
Well, yeah, that's, I don't know, there's a hidden message in there about daughters being oppressed by Trump or something, I suppose.
They've fallen for what they've been told by the press. They go, oh, he's sexist and he said something in a toilet 25 years ago. And, oh, God, the Russians caught him on camera with a prostitute or something like this, which was all debunked. I mean, this was the fake news.
That one was fake news, yeah.
Yeah, that
as far
was
as I
fake news.
understand it,
Yeah. But the real point is nothing is actually being focused on and addressed. And that is really what's very important for these people who are controlling the narrative at the moment.
That is what they're doing. And it's now pretty bizarre, the BBC and the Guardian saying they're going to take action against fake news when they're the sources of fake news. I mean, the Guardian in its climate change story is just totally fake science and fake news. And they are seriously on the run on this matter. I mean, I think if you come on the website, we've done a short, few point arguments about why the climate change story is fake science, and it's very clearly argued, and it's meant to enable people to argue the point everywhere. So come on weatheraction.com and read it. But you see the stuff in there which the Guardian will never ever contemplate discussing, neither will the self-serving scientists, so-called, who are serving this agenda for part of a bigger agenda. You see, if we were talking there about, as I said before, we were doing a little thing about particle physics and measuring the mass of neutrinos or something, if I asked a scientist for the information on measurements, you get them. But you ask them about measurements and evidence and observations on the planet's temperatures and CO2, you don't get them because they don't exist. There's nothing out there which proves their point. So it is actually fake science. And people have to wake up that a lot of what comes before them is going to be untrue, especially now. And, you know, people will have genuinely committed reasons for going on these marches, and that's great. They should, but they should, everyone who's there has to think, well, why actually am I here? What do I want? Not what do I feel about, well, okay, you can feel something about somebody, but, you know, what's going to come out of this? Where are you going to go? What are you going to demand? What do you want to change? That's the issue.
Absolutely, and this goes on a step further from an article that we had up a while ago. It's called Government Organised Protests, and it shows you how the narrative is being controlled, really. So people get bussed in, have their day out, and then they go home again.
Yeah.
And this was a major one. This was the big demonstrations in London, you know, organised by the People's Assembly. But those are very much controlled. They're controlled by the government. It's a controlling of the narrative. But this takes things to an even more absurd level when people don't even know why they're there.
Yeah, that is true, and I think, well, the establishment will use anything they can to manipulate any movement. Now, what we've got now around the world is a kind of anti-establishment movement. People think they're really pissed off with how living standards have been forced down and their way of life has been uprooted and so forth. I mean, that's the kind of feeling. So what happens is all sorts of political interests now jump in to try and grab the banner of being anti-establishment, which of course is pretty completely bizarre. So we have UKIP. Now UKIP stood for leaving the European Union. Okay, fine. But now they're suddenly jumping in saying, oh, we're UKIP, we're leaving the European Union, therefore you've got to support our policies. Well, their policies include privatising the NHS. Well, hang on. A lot of people wanted to leave the European Union precisely to defend the NHS against privatisation pushes by the European Union and things like TTIP. So you know, I mean, there's forces in from UKIP or the Tories or all sorts who will try and take over the mantle of anti-establishment. So anyone who claims stuff, just look at them and think, well, what do you think and what do you want? And why are these people trying to grab your belief in Brexit, for example, in order to do something else? Just be careful.
Well, the whole thing is being bankrolled by billionaire philanthropists.
Well, that's
apparently.
Right. Well, oh yes, like Richard Branson, yes.
And Mr. Soros.
Yeah, they're busy taking over bits of the NHS, making money out of them, telling us to stay in the European Union, while Branson himself either lives on various islands or in Switzerland. So and dodges taxes. So I mean, what are these people but agents of themselves and international corporate super elites?
Yeah, well, we're into quite a serious phase here with the destruction of Western civilization going on around us, and these marches seem to be contributing to that, really, because they're taking people's minds away. I mean, we're having people who don't know why they're there. They've got no cause, and the level of it now is very, very disturbing, I think, because it is almost like some kind of dystopian nightmare, because people don't have a clue actually why they're even at a demonstration. That means
that's worrying,
that the state brainwashing and broadcasting has actually won and taken over, which is very worrying. So we seem to have two factions now. We've got these people who are being called neoliberals, which seem to be quite a large group, but they don't seem to have that much of an individual voice. When we don't hear them anything about their real causes. We just get this kind of generalized vision, which has been sort of imposed on them, which they reflect. And then you've got this group of people who, from within the media, who are being attacked by this. So in other words, if you're for Brexit, then you're a racist. If you
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
vote for Trump, you're a Nazi. And
These labels are just absurd.
and if you want to limit immigration, then you're a racist. So it's
yeah.
brought it down to very clever, actually, very clever this, because it's so simplistic and banal that it's very, very easy to control the narrative.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see a bit of a change. But that's it for this section of the show, which just seemed to have run out of time. Thanks to Piers Corbyn. We'll see you soon.